Open your Bibles, please, to Genesis chapter 25. That's all right. Genesis chapter 25. Those of you who may be new with us, let me welcome you. We're so pleased that you've joined us today. We would love to have you be a part of our class every Sunday. What we're doing now is going through the whole Bible, but not every verse and every chapter. We're just going to deal with the greatest stories in the Bible, the greatest texts. And it doesn't mean that any of the Bible is unimportant, but it simply means that some parts speak to us more clearly than others. Simple illustration I've used. It's why we all know the 23rd Psalm, and you probably don't know the 29th. The 23rd Psalm speaks to us. It speaks to all of us in a very special way. And so we like it better than we do some of the others. So I've told you that in the Torah itself, we have 4 strands, J, E, D, and P. And the priests who were trying really hard to make this whole manuscript fit together put in the connectors. A lot of those begats, to make all the stories fit together, to convince their young people that it all had validity. And their connections in there often make it difficult for people today who don't believe the earth is only 6,000 years old. It's much, much older than that. So, what we're going to be doing as we go through is jumping over the connectors. We're just going to be going from great story to great story as I see them. And I'll do my best to cover the best parts of the Bible, but we're just going to look for the highlights, if you would. So today we're at chapter 25, beginning with verse 19. 25 and 19. Before we get underway, let's pray. God, we remember how John Wesley said, I want to be known as uni homo, one man of one book, and I count on that book to show me the way to heaven. So this is the book, and we want to be a person of one book as well, and we're counting on this book to show us the way to heaven. So we pray you will enlighten us and help us to see those things that are forever true about you and about us, and how you initiate right relationship with us, and if we respond appropriately, we may know ourselves rightly related to you by your generous gift of grace. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, today's story that we're going to begin with is another story about a woman who's having trouble having a baby. And let me remind you that biblical writers still thought if there was no baby being conceived, it was the woman's fault. That surely all men could make babies. We now know, of course, that is not true. Whenever couples are not getting pregnant, that it's just as important that the male be checked as the woman. And we know all about low sperm counts or no sperm counts, all sorts of things that can occur. In the Bible, it was thought to be some problem with the woman if there was no conception taking place. And it was thought that women determine the sex of the child. And we know, of course, that isn't true either. It's the sperm that has everything to do with gender of the child. So women got blamed for a whole lot of things they should not have been blamed for. But always in the Bible, birth is a gift of God. A baby, a child, always a gift of God. Even for those who are not having great difficulty having babies, particularly when people are having difficulty, it's seen as a gift of God. So here's another one of those where we read last Sunday that Isaac is married now. He and Rebekah have come together and they're having no babies. Verse 19. These are the descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham was the father of Isaac. We know he was also the father of Ishmael. And Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. And then it gives her background here a little bit, because there are places in the Hebrew Scriptures where it's very important that Jews marry Jews, and there are other places where they seem to be much more open to marrying people of other tribes, other ethnic groups. So this is one of those times when the servant, you remember, was sent back to Abraham's people. They had stopped up at Haran. up here, this is Haran, from Ur over to Haran. Some stopped there. Others went down into Canaan, eventually all the way down to the Negev desert. Okay, so the servant went back to Abraham's family to find a wife. And remember, he didn't say, I hope she's tall, hope she has pretty eyes, hope she has a, hourglass figure or something. No, I'm going to choose for Isaac the wife who, when I ask for a drink of water from the well, she not only offers me a drink, but waters my camels as well. Remember? That's the kind of woman I want for Isaac. And that's the kind of woman that he got, Rebekah. All right. So, Rebekah was the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Paddan Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean. Now, I want you to notice something here, and that is that these words, Aramean, are important for a number of reasons. And one is that one of the oldest little chips of engraved pottery that we've ever found connecting Jews to a written language says, a wandering Aramean was my father. And the language Jesus spoke was Aramaic. Remember? Aramaic. So this is important, this old word Aramean. It's mentioned twice here, the Arameans. Isaac prayed to, and here we have the name given to Moses at the burning bush. I keep reminding you, what? We have here the name given to Moses at the burning bush, the I am who I am, even though, of course, they don't know that name until we get to Moses, and that's in Exodus. But I'm reminding you, these stories are not put down until long after the time of Moses. So the writers and the storytellers before the writers knew that name after Moses' time. So this is probably another story from the J source, where God is called Yahweh, and we call this author, whose name we don't know, the Yahvist. So Isaac prayed to Yahweh, the I am who I am, for his wife, because he believes she's the problem, because she was barren. And the I am who I am granted his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. Now notice the very next verse tells us there are multiple conceptions here. Even though we're not told till a little bit later, surely enough, twins are born. It says plural, the children. The children struggled together within her. And she said, if it is to be this way, in other words, such a difficult pregnancy, why do I live? So she went to inquire of the I am who I am. And the I am who I am said to her, notice, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other. But let me give you a little heads up. It's not going to be the one she thinks. The one who's stronger physically is not the one who's going to lead Israel. Esau is the bear. Jacob stays around the tent with his mother. But Jacob will become the leader. All right, so one will be stronger than the other, and then he gives her the truth. The elder shall serve the younger. And that was against all the rules. The firstborn is supposed to inherit. The firstborn is supposed to inherit. Gets a double portion to younger ones. Also gets mom and dad, of course. You get double the portion, and you're supposed to look after mom and dad as long as both of them live. But here we're told one will be stronger, elder will serve the younger. Let's go on. When her time to give birth was at hand, there were, in fact, twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy mantle. So they named him Esau. Now, Dr. Bill Power, when he was teaching us this all those years ago, said, what the old storyteller is describing here is a monkey, almost. Esau is a monkey. He's an animal. He's an ape, if you would. He's going to think, with anything but his head. He's not going to think things through. He's not going to be careful. He's going to be impetuous. He's going to make snap judgments. Big, strong, capable in some ways, very incapable in other ways. Afterward, his brother came out, second-born, with his hand gripping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. Dr. Bill Power said this Hebrew word literally means, and this is important to remember, the grabber or the gripper, the one holding on to his brother's heel. And Jacob will be, for years and years, the grabber. And that famous story will come to at the Jabbok River takes on all the more significance when God asks, "Tell me your name," and he has to say, "I'm the grabber." Okay, so hold on to that thought. We have one who's red and hairy. Now, there is a word that comes down over time that has to do with red people, if you would, and it finally becomes the Edomites. E-D-O-M, the Edomites. They lived down just south of the Dead Sea. The Negev Desert is slightly west and the Sinai slightly east, but right on the banks. And the Israelites, when they get out of Egypt after 400 years, beg the Edomites to help them, and they do not. They go at war with each other. Scholars believe Esau was the founder. That nation of his was not America, not France, a tribe, but a tribe nonetheless called the Edomites. Other scholars say there's something else going on here, and that is that we know ancient folk, our ancestors, were hunters and gatherers. And it was a real step forward when we learned to domesticate animals so we didn't have to go hunt them. And we learned to till the soil. So we didn't just have to randomly find grains and fruits and so on to eat. So guess what? Esau represents a hunter-gatherer. And Jacob will become the one who stays by the tent, domesticating animals, tilling the soil. Okay? All of these are theories about how these ancient stories came into being, but anthropologists say these old stories told around campfires have great truths, tremendous truths in them, and all kinds of things feed into the storyteller's art as they try to explain who they are and what they are about. Okay, verse 27. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a hunter-gatherer, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, living in tents. Now notice the rub. Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. What kind of bedtime does that make for? What kind of family does it make when father favors one and mother favors other? What does that do to the children? But guess what? We don't learn. We don't learn. Jacob, as we will see, undergoes years of misery away from his family. And when he has sons, what does he do? He chooses 2 over the other 10. He makes the same mistake that his father and mother made, choosing one child over the other. Now, I understand how different children are. Any of us who've had children, grandchildren, or observed somebody else's know how different the children can be. Our Jason and Janet have 3 little girls, 7, almost 5, just barely 3. And what difference in personalities. Same mother, same daddy, so different. The oldest one is shy. If people say anything sort of sharp to her, she just buries her little head. Sweet, precious child, shy. The little middle one is a tiger. I mean, she just is. Gail and I kept all three of them one Saturday afternoon not long ago. Took them to one of the big playgrounds here in Tulsa, and we were playing. And there was a special thing you try to walk across and so on. And when somebody else was coming, when somebody else was in sight, the older one stepped back. The younger one took it to him. We fight it out in the middle of the stream to see who goes. You come this way, I'm going that way. I'm going over and past you if that's what's required. They got here with the genes. The third one, we're still trying to figure out this 3-year-old, exactly where she's going to fall in all of this. But how different they are. But parents are called to love them all the same, even if you have to love them differently. You have to love them differently because they are different. And some need a lot more stroking, and others need sort of a kick in the seat of the pants from time to time. Some require more times out, and some require more hugs, though everybody needs hugs. You understand what I'm saying. When families make these decisions, and here are these ancient storytellers who get it. They get it. And they're trying to point it out to you and me. When Dad chooses one and Mom chooses another, you don't make the kids any better. Jacob grows up, and with all this hurt and pain, he does the same thing. And this is what psychologists and psychiatrists call scripting. Scripting. We live out the script. Follow the Kennedys if you want a good example. What Papa Joe did, what John did, what Robert did, follow the script. In my family, there is so much alcoholism. My mother saw this when she started going to Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, I should say, to try to help my dad. And she started hearing this stuff about scripting. I mean, she started taking me and my sister and my brother when we were teenagers, even preteens. My memory is we started going when I was 10 or 11. My sister 2 years younger, my brother 2 years younger than she. We were taken to these meetings to try to be sure we did not follow the path our father had taken. In the last years of my mother and father's life, Dad was still going to AA, and my mom was right across the hall in Al-Anon. And 2/3 of the people in the room where Dad was trying to help them were his own nephews, nieces, and so on. And across the hall, Mom's trying to help the spouses deal with all these problems that have come on them. We tend to live out the script that came to us. We tend to live out. My grandmother Biggs grew up with an Irish father who screamed and ranted and raved, according to her. He told her, "You're the ugliest child I think God ever made." She told me this when I was a child. I'd be working for her and she'd run out of things to talk to me about. She talked to me about everything, as if I were an adult. My father, she said, he'd been dead for years before I came along. My father told me I was the ugliest child he'd ever seen. You know why? He wanted to keep working in the field. He wanted to keep working in the field. She's big and strong, could do a lot of work. Didn't want her to get interested in men. And one Saturday, she had gone in with him in the wagon into the town to buy provisions. And somebody in this little mercantile store introduced her to Mr. Biggs. And the next week, Mr. Biggs wrote her father a letter and said, "Saturday in the mercantile, I met your daughter, Elizabeth. She seemed to me a strong and capable woman. I would like to marry her. I'm asking your permission." And so the father said, "Did you meet somebody in the store named Biggs?" And she said, "Yes, I did." "Well, he wants to marry you." And she said, "I want to marry him." And they got married. She had a son, my dad. She had 5 daughters. This son of hers, she would have died in a minute for him. But you know what she taught him? What she had learned. Don't show anybody you care because they'll hurt you. She had tried to express love to her father. He had treated her horribly, miserably. Don't show anybody you care. They'll hurt you. And that's the way my dad grew up. The only time he was gentle, kind, when he was so drunk he was staggering, falling down. Then all the little inhibitors went to sleep and he could express who he really wanted to be deep down. As soon as he sobered up, he is hateful, mean, hard to get along with much of the time. Okay? His mother meant to do the right thing. She did the wrong thing. She did the wrong thing. I heard him say at an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous one night when he was telling his story, I think I hated my mother for 50 years. I hated my mother for 50 years. She held me at arm's length. She would have died for him in a minute. She held him at arm's length so he would be strong and not let people hurt him. Okay, scripting, you see, that's what psychologists and psychiatrists call scripting. Things that are done to us that we hate. If we're not careful, we end up doing the same thing. One of my friends in high school had an alcoholic father as I did. The good thing about my dad was when he got drunk, he was kind and gentle. When this young man's father got drunk, he was hateful and mean. Every day he was nice and kind and gentle. He got drunk, he got mean, hateful, really expressed what he felt, beat on his wife. And this young man told me when we were teenagers, when I get big enough, I'm going to kill him. If I see him beat my mother, I'm going to kill him. You know what? By the time he was 16, he was an alcoholic, and he died at 30. He did the same thing his father had done before him. Exactly. Scripting. We don't have to do that. I am not an alcoholic. I do not drink. My sister's not an alcoholic, does not drink. My brother is not an alcoholic, does not drink. You don't have to go down that road, but the greater tendency is to do it. The greater tendency is to do it. To do what you saw modeled. Even if you hated it. Abusers grow up and become abusers. Most often, not absolutely necessary, often they do. So here we have a family off to a really rocky start. Dad chooses one, Mom chooses another. Verse 29. Once, when Jacob was cooking a stew, remember he stays close to the tent, works with his mother, Esau came in from the field. It doesn't mean a plowed field. It means the woods. He's a hunter. He's a gatherer. He was famished. Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red stuff. How was he described? Red. Hairy. I want some of that red stuff, he said. I am starving to death. Therefore he was called Edom. See it? All right, this is a little parenthetical expression. It's in the text there, and so it's put in parentheses for you to understand. This is for you and me. These are for the readers who came along who didn't know that Esau would become the father of the Edomites. Okay. So Esau is called Edom. And Edomites and Israelites will have trouble centuries later. Jacob said, well, first sell me your birthright. I mean, you're older, I'm younger. And Esau said, I'm about to die. What good is a birthright to me? That's how far ahead he thinks. Guess what? We had a daughter who never understood delayed gratification. Never got it. You remember the studies done with the children who were put in a room, one child alone in a room with a cookie, and told, if you wait till I come back, I'll give you 2. They had a camera in the room. You understand? You can eat the cookie anytime you want to. But if you wait till I come back, I'll give you 2. They've now followed up on those children 40 years later. And they discovered that the children who waited for 2 have succeeded in their lives. And the children who ate 1 have so often made wrong decisions. If you don't get delayed gratification, you're in trouble. That if you do the right thing now, better things happen later. If you avoid the wrong now, then better things may come to you later. Esau doesn't get it. I'm starving to death. What do I care about a birthright? Give me some of that red stuff. And so another insight into Esau's personality. So Jacob says, though, swear to me first. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil, peas and beans. They learned how to domesticate plants by this time. He ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. And by despised here, the word means didn't cherish it. He didn't cherish it. Should have been something very special to be firstborn. He doesn't get it. Okay, everybody happy? Let's jump. Chapter 27. When Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called his elder son Esau and said to him, "My son," he answered, "Here I am." He said, "See, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Could be soon. Now then take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field." See, field doesn't mean cultivated, just out into the woods, grassy meadows, whatever was around them at the time. "Hunt game for me. Then prepare for me savory food, such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. Notice how it doesn't say when he spoke to their son Esau. Esau is hers too, you see, when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went out to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son, not to their son, Jacob, "I heard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me game and prepare for me savory food to eat, that I may bless you before the I am who I am, before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my word as I command you. Go to the flock and get me 2 choice kids, little goats, so that I may prepare from them savory food for your father, such as he likes. She knows him well, and you shall take it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, "Look, my brother Esau is a hairy man. I am a man of smooth skin. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I will seem to be mocking him and bring a curse on myself and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my word. Go, get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother. His mother prepared savory food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on the younger son Jacob. And she put the skins of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she handed the savory food and the bread that she had prepared to her son Jacob, which means Esau looks, smells, and feels like a goat. You understand? So he went into his father and said, "My father," and he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" And Jacob said, "I'm Esau, your firstborn. I've done as you told me. Now sit up, eat of my game, so that you may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you found it so quickly, my son?" It takes a while to find wild game and prepare it. He answered, "Because," and notice here how we use God to our own advantage if we can. "Because the I am who I am, your Elohim, granted me success." Here we have both names for God. The name used in the J source and the name used in the E source. North tribes, south tribes, they all know this story well. Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." So Jacob went up to his father Isaac, who held him and felt him, and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. They're hairy, like a goat." He did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy, like his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau? Ask him one more time." He answered, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his garments. and blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the I am who I am has blessed." Verse 30. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of his father Isaac, his brother Esau came in from his hunting. He also prepared savory food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father sit up and eat of his son's game so that you may bless me." And his father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" And he answered, "I'm your firstborn." Strange, he remembers now. The day he was so hungry, he forgot he was the firstborn. "I'm starving to death here. Give me something to eat." Now he remembers, "I'm your firstborn son, Esau." And Isaac trembled violently. This old, dying, blind father realizes what he's done. He realizes, and he trembles violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came? And I blessed him. Yes, and blessed he shall be." When I've given my word, I've given my word. And when Esau heard his father's words, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, me also, father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named the grabber? He took away my birthright, and look, now he's taken away my blessing." Then he said, hear this word, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Verse 38, Esau said to his father, "Have you only one blessing, father? Bless me, me also, father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. In the Knippa series that we have every February, sometimes January, sometimes February, we had a Roman Catholic nun about 4 or 5 years ago named Sister Mary Boys. Last name is B-O-Y-S, Sister Mary Boys. In New York City, Union Theological Seminary, which Dr. Tankersley attended, received his master's degree there, is just across the street from the famed Riverside Church. You have Riverside Church, Union Theological Seminary, and the Jewish Seminary. Sister Mary Boys teaches at Union and in the Jewish Seminary. Both. She has great love and appreciation for the Jewish community. Believes their covenant with God has never been revoked. And the book she had written shortly before she came here was called, "Have You Only One Blessing?" If you bless Jews, do you have none for us Gentiles? If you bless us Gentiles, have you no blessing for Jews? If you bless Jews and Gentile Christians, have you nothing left for Muslims, followers of Islam? You might want to take a look at her book. Have you only one blessing? She takes it right here. This is the title right here. This plaintive cry of Esau. Verse 41. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Remember Godfather? When Michael Corleone is betrayed by his own brother, and he hugs him and whispers into his ear, "Fredo, I know it was you. I know it was you. But as long as my mother lives, nothing will happen to you." And he walks across the room and whispers to those who work for him, "Nothing must happen to Fredo that would break my mother's heart." And when his mother died, he had one of his men take Fredo fishing out in the lake and shot him in the head. Okay? But not as long as my father is living. When he dies, when people have mourned, I'm going to kill him. I will get Jacob. But the words of her elder son Esau were told to Rebekah. There's a spy here. So she sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau, not my son, your brother Esau is consoling himself." He's trying to say, just wait, by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away. Then I will send and bring you back from there. Why should I lose? And finally she's figured out what's happened here. Why should I lose both of you in one day? She realizes that Esau knows she was a co-conspirator here, and that Esau will not treat her the way he has before. If Esau kills Jacob, she's lost them both. So flee. Now where does she send him? Back up here, where she came from. Back up here, where Abraham came from. So go marry kinsfolk. Now what I've skipped over here is that Esau, in that space I skipped, has chosen him wives. He's decided to get married, and he marries two women, and they're both Hittites. Hittites. Dr. Oswald Hoffman died just a couple of years ago. Great Lutheran preacher. The voice of the Lutheran hour on radio for years and years and years, along with pastoring a church. Great preacher. Dr. Wiseman used to have him come year after year in the Lenten series here. I went to hear him every time he was here because he was truly outstanding. Great, great preacher. He was of German descent, his wife Swedish descent. And one year he stood up and said, "I have a story I want to tell you. But you know," he said, "it is no longer politically correct to tell jokes on Swedes. Not politically correct, and I want to be politically correct. But you can tell Hittite jokes," he said, "because the Hittites are now extinct. So I want to begin today with telling you a Hittite story. Once upon a time there were two Hittites named Sven and Ole," he said. And he told his Sven and Ole story nonetheless. Well, the Hittites are all gone now, but they were one of those tribal groups living down around the Dead Sea, and Esau took a wife. Not from among the Israelites, not from among the family up in Haran, but Hittite women. Guess what? A little bit later, if you want to read this whole thing, he goes and finds a descendant of Abraham's other son, Ishmael, and marries one of the descendants of Ishmael, a cousin, but from the slave girl, Hagar. So Esau's, sort of rubbing folks' nose in this. He's angry, he's hurt, he's making life difficult for everybody, and perhaps rightly so. Chapter 28, verse 10. So Jacob, the grabber, left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And let me remind you that Beersheba is still a settlement today in the Negev desert. We know exactly where that is. And I told you that one of our guides in Israel, Jacob, had a son, I assume still has a son living there, and daughter-in-law, who decided to go to Beersheba because the Israeli government was giving land and incentives to anyone who would settle in the Negev desert. And so they went. And Jacob was physical fitness buff on into his early 60s. I haven't seen him in a number of years now. Every time he went to Masada, he said one of the ways he checked to see how he was doing was he ran down, all the way down Masada. And there are many, many, many steps. Our boys ran down with Jacob a couple of times, and then Jason decided he was going to show Jacob a thing or two and run up Masada. He was running cross country for SMU at the time, and he brought his running shoes and his singlets and shorts, and he changed that morning and ran up and beat us who rode on the cable car. But nonetheless, Jacob ran down Masada every time he took a different touring group to see if he was still doing well. He rode his bicycle, he told us one time, all the way down to Beersheba to visit his son and daughter-in-law. See how tough he was. If he could ride through the desert all those ways down to Beersheba. So we know where this is. And that's how far Abraham and now Isaac had gotten. We were told earlier they were moving by steps to the Negev. So now to go all the way up through Canaan back to Haran. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. He came to a certain place, stayed there for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he dreamed. Who talks about visions and dreams? The E-writer. The E-writer has a lot about visions and dreams. I tell you, the J-writer, in those stories, God just walks up and speaks to folks. Morning, Adam. How are you? I'm fine. You all right, Eve? I'm okay. But then a little more sophistication, we think, when people started saying, now, did God really speak to you so that you heard with your ears? Well, no. In my deepest heart, I had a vision, I had a dream, So this is almost for sure evidence of the E-writer here. He dreamed there was a ladder set up on the earth, the top of it reaching to heaven. Now notice that we sing at camp, we are climbing Jacob's ladder. Jacob never climbs. Jacob doesn't climb. Angels come down and go back up. And go down and come back up. Jacob doesn't climb. It's okay. It's a good song. We've sung it all these many, many years at camp. It's a good song, but it's not quite accurate. The angels are supposed to come down on the ladder. The angels of God were ascending, descending. Notice, the angels of Elohim, verse 13, and the I am who I am, stood beside him and said, I am the I am who I am, the Elohim of Abraham, your father, and the Elohim of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your offspring, and your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth. Does that sound like the promise he had made to Abraham 2 generations before? And you shall spread abroad to the west, that'd be the Mediterranean, to the east, Jordan for them, to the north, all the way to Haran, and to the south, as far as Egypt was the way they thought. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your offspring. Know that I am who I am is with you and will keep you wherever you go and bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob woke from his sleep and said, surely the I am who I am is in this place. And I didn't know it. He was afraid. Now notice we talk about fear of the Lord, and this usually translates a Hebrew word that literally means for us to stand in awe. He stood in awe and said, how awesome is this place. He's in the desert. But it's awesome because God is here, you see. God is here. This is none other than the house of Elohim. This is the gate of heaven. So Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it to anoint it. He called that place Bethel. Bethel. Okay? We've heard about Bethel and Ai, the two digs of those ancient communities that Mishnah used in writing the book, The Source. Okay. Abraham and Sarah had passed this place, Bethel. Now Jacob has come back to it. But the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if Elohim will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, don't let Esau kill me, then the I am who I am shall be my Elohim, and this stone which I've set up for a pillar shall be Elohim's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you. Greatest sermon I ever heard preached on this text was done by a Jewish rabbi. I heard it 40 years ago. I've never forgotten it. When I was at Perkins School of Theology at SMU, one of our professors was Rabbi Levi Olin. He was head of the largest Reformed temple in Dallas. This year's Martin Clinton Gordy presenter was later the rabbi at that same temple. Rabbi Zimmerman decided after some years at this wonderfully big temple, Reformed temple in Dallas, he wanted to be an academician. Went to Cincinnati. There are only 3 Reformed seminaries in this country: New York, Cincinnati, Los Angeles. Cincinnati was the first, before New York and Los Angeles. They have a 4th campus in Jerusalem. Rabbi Zimmerman decided he'd like to go back to academia, and he became the head of the seminary in Cincinnati. While he was head of the seminary, both of Charles and Nancy Sherman's sons went through that seminary, and where we ordain in an annual conference after all of one's academic qualifications are satisfied and so on, they actually ordain at the seminary itself. So Zimmerman ordained Charles and Nancy's 2 boys. And then just 2 or 3 years ago, he decided, well, he'd like to finish up his life as a rabbi with a temple again. Didn't come back to Dallas. He went to the Hamptons in New York. Rough spot. So he's coming to us. He's coming to preach for us. But Rabbi Olin was at that great synagogue temple in Dallas. And every time it was his turn to preach in chapel at SMU, it was standing room only. I kid you not. He was that good. And so here I was, one of the young students, and he stood up that day and read this very story I've just read to you. And then he said, was Jacob a bargain hunter or not? Stop and think about it. Here is a man who's running for his life, who's looking behind him every 15 minutes to see if Esau's on the way. And he said, we Jews would say, the chutzpah of this guy, to wake up the next morning and say, God Almighty is in this place, and if He will let me go safely and return home safely and give me millions of dollars, I'll give you 10%. He said, notice God doesn't respond. Doesn't respond. And then he said, aren't we all looking for a bargain? Aren't we all looking for a bargain? You give me a lot, I'll give you a little. I put in a little, I take out a lot. Aren't we? And then he said, what I believe our scriptures say is, in things that really matter, there are no bargains. You want a good marriage? You don't put in a little and take out a lot. You want a good marriage? You have to put in a lot. You have to make regular deposits of genuine care and concern and provision and so on. He gave examples. Parenthood? It's wonderful, he said. I love my kids better than my own life. But it's not a bargain. One cannot be a good parent by putting in a little and taking out a lot. You have to put in a lot. A lot. And be grateful if you get back a little. And he went on and on. Oh, it's a great sermon. A great sermon. Look at Jacob. Here's the grabber who has the gall, you and I would say, to say to God Almighty, give me everything I want, make me rich. Don't let my brother kill me. I'll give you 10%. God doesn't respond. He doesn't respond. Okay. Verse 13. Oh, chapter 29. We're going to jump a little bit. Let's get to chapter 29. Jacob arrives at Haran. When Laban heard the news that his sister's son Jacob, he ran to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. Hold that thought. Because guess what? This old uncle is just like Jacob. He will do his best to trick Jacob at every turn. My professor said, look at this text well. I mean, what do we know that's good about Jacob up to this point? We know nothing good about Jacob up to this point. And his uncle throws his arms around him, kisses him on the back of the neck. What are you doing here? Well, my mother and I, and my father and my mother. You are my family, he said. Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. I recognize you. You just like me. But guess what the uncle also resolves? You won't get the best of me. You won't get the best of me. I'll get the best of you. And he does, of course, for a while. Well, we'll come to all that. You are my own flesh and blood. So, Jacob stayed with him a month. Let me remind you of one thing here before we go any further. Think about Rebekah. We don't know how hard it was to love Esau, how difficult he may have been as a son. Rebekah pours her whole life into this one son, Jacob. Risks everything. In those days, women didn't have the right of divorce. Men had the right. And all it took was for a man to say to a woman, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, pack it up and go. I mean, if Esau's old and blind, Rebekah's old too. And she risks it all for Jacob. And guess what? He never gets back while she's still alive. So the older son knows he can no longer trust his mother. She's plotted against him. She's done him in. So she admits she's already lost Esau. She doesn't want Jacob to get killed because he'll lose them both, she's saying. So she knows she's lost Esau. But what's it going to be like now to curl up in a goat skin with a husband who knows she's deceived him? He knows she's deceived him. That she has made all this happen to him. She's been a part of taking advantage of his being old and his being blind. So how's that relationship going, you figure? And the son for whom she did it all, she never gets to see again. When he gets back, 20 years later, she's dead. Never. A dysfunctional family? I think so. Well, let's go a little bit farther. Laban said to Jacob, because you are my kinsman, I mean, we're just alike, boy, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were lovely. Now I want you to notice something here. This is a new translation, relatively so. Her eyes were lovely. Look down at the footnote, and it says the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. The King James says her eyes were weak. Her eyes were weak. So we don't know what this word is. If you remember when Dr. Bruce Metzger was here as our Barton Clinton Gordy presenter, he had chaired a committee of 34 scholars, some of the very best in the world. And they had spent 17 years, and all of them were professors, and they still had to do their own teaching and stuff. But they would come together, and now you translate this chapter, and you or this small group work on this, and so on. But it took them 17 years with what they were doing to finish the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. And when he was here, he told us there are still more than 1,000 words in the Hebrew Scriptures whose meaning we are not sure about. More than 1,000. This is one of them. We don't know what it was saying about her eyes. King James thought they were weak. And they don't mean she didn't see well. Probably they meant she was shy. Her eyes, people have strong eyes who look you right in the eye. Strong eyes. Weak here doesn't mean she needed glasses, if that's the right word. Probably means she was shy. But Dr. Metzger and those who worked with him said, no, we're not sure. Leah's eyes were lovely, they decided maybe the word was. Can't be sure. Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. That'll be my wages. Now how big a bluff is that? I mean, he's been there a month. He really wants to go see his mother. Doesn't want Esau to kill him. I'll give you 7 years if you'll let me have Rachel. Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Your bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife that I may go in to her, for my time is completed. I've done my 7. So Laban gathered together all the people of the place, their tribe, and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. It is, he put her in the tent. It's dark. It's in the middle of the night. He put Leah in the tent. He went into her, Jacob to Leah, and then it goes on. Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her maid. These handmaids become very important later. When morning came, sun rises. Oh no, it was Leah. Now, is this his own uncle? I mean, he has deceived his old blind father by pretending to be someone he's not. And his uncle has sent him the wrong wife. It was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this you've done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me? And Laban says, you don't know how things are done up here where I live. You may cheat an older brother where you came from, not up here. Elder still means something. You don't do for the younger before you've done for the elder. This is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, that is, spend a week with her, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week. Gave Leah the best he had for a week. And then Jacob did so, completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. So now he's got them both, but he owes 7 more years. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He served Laban for another 7 years. All right, we're going to have to stop there. So if this uncle is just like Jacob and Jacob's just like the uncle, how is this going to play out? We shall see. Stay tuned. We have bells and choirs and candle lighters and all sorts of things. Don't rush off if you haven't been to church yet.